Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I'm Saini Gray. Mexican police have stopped hundreds of anti-immigrant protesters from reaching a migrant shelter in the city of Tijuana. Tijuana residents had previously protested the migrants' arrival at the border city. They shouted no to invasion in reference to the caravans. For their part, the migrants say that these demonstrations are isolated incidents that do not represent the Mexican people. The first part of the caravan remains in Tijuana. The Mexican government has offered jobs to those who apply for residency status, although some of the migrants have doubts about the offer. Activists have condemned the agreement with the United States, which seeks to prevent migrants from continuing on their journey to the border. Some church groups are providing the migrants with access to showers, sanitary products, coffee, and donuts. And a new group of Salvadorian migrants are heading to the United States. They're leaving from the capital, San Salvador, to join the thousands who have fled poverty and unrest in Central America.
Right now, we're going to board a bus to the border to see how it goes.
We'll need strength later on. You have to conserve strength for later. Better to go by bus.
Meanwhile, U.S. troops continue to reinforce the southern border. Around 100 soldiers deployed in the city of Laredo are installing barbed wire on the fence. More voices are calling for Chile's Interior Minister Chadwick's resignation after the murder of the Mapuche activist Camilo Catrillanca. Meanwhile, the Mapuche people continue suffering suppression.
Protesters arrived to La Moneda Palace to urge the government political responsibility on the Interior Minister Chadwick, but what they found was more repression. The Mapuche people continue suffering state terrorism. It is estimated that 16 young Mapuche have been killed during this democratic period.
Every government saying to turn the lands, but I don't believe them. They continue to torture young people and mistreat our children.
In social media, the hashtag Renuncia Chadwick, Spanish for Resign Chadwick, has been trending topic worldwide. Why there is this massive deployment of security forces in the Araucanía? You say there is no ethnic bias, but there are over 300 special forces deployed. How would you explain that?
You are saying things that are wrong. There are not 300 special forces agents deployed, so I ask you to be objective.
Could you tell us the number then?
Yes, the first group arrived with 5 agents at the place where Camilo Catrillanca's unfortunate murder took place. There were 5 police agents.
A Mapuche comrade has been hurt, and police continues shooting in the community. There are 2 helicopters around and at least more than 400 officials in the community. There you can see one helicopter flying, shooting.
The explanation given by the Interior Minister makes it even worse. It looks like the government is defending this crime, and that is very worrying.
And that's why we go to Gualmapu.
If you could travel as the Telesur team, we would be really thankful, so you are able to cover and spread the truth of how things happened in Chantilly.
It is a matter to get to know the truth on a case that has put Chile under the eye of the world.
Argentina's Navy has released the first images of the submarine that went missing with its 44-member crew 1 year ago. The images show the Arasan 1 submarine at a depth of more than 900 meters in the ocean. When an international operation failed to locate it, the government hired the U.S. marine tracking company Ocean Infinity to find the submarine. Meanwhile, President Mauricio Macri says the death of the 44 crew members has caused great pain, and he announced 10 days of national mourning.
It's a news that causes us great pain, the confirmation of the death of the 44 crew members in dramatic circumstances.
But friends and relatives of the missing crew are outraged over the government's response to the discovery of the submarine. They are asking that the vessel be recovered from the ocean so that an investigation can be launched and justice served.
Those guilty are here. Those responsible for what happened with the Ara San Juan and our sailors are here. I have asked, and I have always asked, for those responsible to go to jail. And if they have to go to jail, they should go to jail.
We want closure to this. This has to end once and for all. There have been 366 days of pain and waiting and despair, and at some point it has to end.
Our correspondent in Argentina, Sabrina Roth, tells us more about the discovery of the submarine.
The Argentine Army and Defense Ministry have released a joint statement confirming the discovery of the Ara San Juan submarine that went missing 1 year ago. Hired by the Argentine government, the U.S. marine tracking company Ocean Infinity found the watercraft just before it was about to suspend the search until February for ship repairs. However, Defense Minister Oscar Aguad said that Argentina currently lacks the proper technology to recover the submarine that lays over 900 meters deep on the sea floor. He said they haven't entirely given up on the recovery, but even with international help, it would be hard to succeed. Officials are yet to determine their next move. Relatives of the missing 44-member crew said they are very disappointed how the government has been handling the case. Some question the exact date of the discovery, as President Mauricio Macri had announced at the anniversary of the disappearance that there would be news about the submarine soon. And 2 days later, they suddenly found it. Judge Marta Yanez is in charge of the investigation that spans over 70,000 pages with 70 witnesses, but no one has yet been held accountable. She's also going to determine whether to proceed with the recovery of the submarine.
Former left-wing presidents from Latin America will attend the G20 Counter Forum that will take place in Buenos Aires on Monday. The event is aimed at providing an alternative and critical thought process to the official G20 Forum. The Counter Forum will be focused on equality and social policies for the Latin American region. 70 Venezuelans have returned home last weekend on the first flight to depart from Colombia under the Return to the Homeland plan. We have more in this report.
This group didn't arrive by land. Instead, this group is able to take a short flight home from Colombia.
It's a huge difference, of course, much better. It's more comfortable. Thank God we are already in Venezuela because we had some difficult times there.
The experiences of Venezuelans who were living in the neighboring country showed that under this Colombian government, social, economic, and human rights suffer.
What happens is that the publicity against Venezuela has been so widespread that everybody wants to leave Venezuela. But no, I tell all my close friends that they should return, because in Venezuela we have a lot of opportunity to grow in this country.
In Colombia's capital, Bogotá, their expectations were met by a very harsh reality.
There they began to treat us badly. They will call us gonorrhea. They will chase us from the plazas. They will mistreat us. City Hall chased us away as if we were some type of garbage. They humiliated us.
And similarly, they experienced labor exploitation.
At least personally, they paid me 20,000 pesos. And aside from that, we had to work from 7 in the morning until 9 or 10 at night.
This week, 3 flights will arrive, while the Venezuelan government plans to provide more support for those who want to return to their South American nation.
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. People in Peru have protested outside the Uruguayan ambassador's office, residents actually in Lima, after former President Alan Garcia applied for asylum. Demonstrators at the site protested in support and against the former president. Garcia is under investigation for allegedly receiving bribes from the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht during the construction of an electric train in the capital.
We are angry because it's not possible for the Uruguayan embassy to give asylum to a president who caused so much damage to the country and who is currently being legally investigated by the judiciary.
Garcia's lawyer has responded to his client's asylum request.
We hope the political asylum requested to the Republic of Uruguay is accepted. Once it is granted, the government of President Martín Vizcarra can go through international shame by denying the safe conduct for former President Garcia.
Over 100 students from Santander and Popayan marched more than 500 kilometers to Bogota on Sunday. They are condemning military force recently used against the student movement. They are demanding a higher budget for public education.
This process of demonstration in which 123 students from Popayan and Santander are taking part is headed step by step for education to the city of Bogota. Among our demands, we are seeking guarantees for social protest. Students are taking part in an indefinite national strike demanding a higher education budget. We reject the mistreatment by and the deployment of the military against the student movement. We've been attacked, haunted, and sabotaged, and we need guarantees to demonstrate, and that's why we are here in Cali, and we headed for our next stop in Buga.
Last week, Cuba announced that it will end its collaboration with the More Doctors program in Brazil. Details in this report.
The Cuban Health Department has announced their doctors will leave the More Doctors program in Brazil. The decision came just after President-elect Jair Bolsonaro referred to the Cuban specialists in a threatening and dismissive way. Bolsonaro also reaffirmed his willingness to change the terms and conditions of the agreement with the organization.
They say that this was a program that barely benefited the Cuban government, but actually this is a program that offered medical care to 60 million Brazilians that didn't have access to basic medical care before. So Cuba and other countries ending their contribution to the program means ending with it.
The program was created in 2013 under former President Dilma Rousseff. It promoted the assistance efforts of Brazilian and foreigner doctors in poor and isolated areas of the country.
We have an extraordinary health public system, but the support of Cuban doctors who went to small towns was very important to our country. It was a huge opportunity because it brought a different kind of medicine that was centered on prevention and the human being, and that was important for Brazil. It's an irony that Bolsonaro's government program is aiming at privatizing our health system. He was a victim of an attack in a small city in Minas Gerais, and he was saved by our health system. He was operating in a hospital that receives public resources to do surgical operations like that. He was saved by the system he wants to privatize.
People around Brazil are grateful for the respect, professionalism, and attention of the Cuban doctors that contributed to their country.
An indigenous delegation from Chile's Easter Island is heading to London to ask the British Museum to return one of their most culturally significant statues. The delegation of the island's native Rapa Nui people seeks the return of a more than 2-meter-tall basalt figure taken by a British explorer in 1868. It is one of the 1,000 statues carved by islanders more than 3,000 years ago. The British Museum says it's willing to consider their request.
We are traveling to be able to touch the hearts of the English and get them to understand the point of view of the Rapa Nui people. For them, the British Museum is a famous millennium-old statue. For us, it's an ancestor that we need to return to Rapa Nui. We've gone 150 years without it.
We head now to the Caribbean island of Antigua, where stray dogs are a growing problem, but one animal charity is on a mission to help. Our correspondent from St. John's, Gemma Handy, has more on the story.
From countryside to city streets, stray dogs are a familiar sight across the Caribbean island of Antigua. Many are emaciated and in poor health from a life left to fend for themselves. They also face the constant risk of being hit by passing vehicles. One organisation is on a mission to help. Animal charity Paws is run entirely on donations to meet the $10,000 it needs each month to run its rescue and rehoming centre. Paws is currently home to 24 adult dogs and 20 puppies. Many arrived here sick and suffering.
Fleas, ticks, parasites, worms, mange, scabies, often very thin. It's hard because you can't really understand why people would leave them. Obviously some of them have been in a certain area for weeks, months, before anyone's actually picked them up or helped. So it's a bit frustrating sometimes, but I mean, at the end of the day it's nice to see them rehomed.
The solution, she says, is simple.
Spay and neuter. If people don't spay and neuter, they don't understand that within a few months the dog is going to have pups, the pups are going to be having pups, and it's ongoing constantly. If people don't spay and neuter the animals and they don't rehome their pups when they have them, you know, most of them just wander. Most people think that if their dogs had pups and they wander, someone will take them up and they'll be okay. It's not the case.
Volunteers who donate their time are a lifeline.
I'm just here to do the bookkeeping, to keep the records straight and enter everything into the computer, and then it gets turned over at the end of the year to the accountant for the audit. I think without Paws there'd be a lot of animals that wouldn't have survived. There'd be a lot of animals out on the street starving and going a slow way instead of, you know, finding a home.
These are some of the lucky ones. With so many dogs on the streets, Paws gives priority to the orphaned, the abandoned and the abused. 14-year-old Hopalong was rescued from an asphalt plant. The sole survivor of a pack of 10 deliberately killed by poisoning earlier this year. Staff work hard to socialise the four-legged residents in their care and improve their chance of finding a forever home.
Paws has successfully rehomed more than 100 dogs this year alone. But with the intake rate still exceeding that by 10%, the country faces an uphill battle to reduce the number of those left on the streets. Gemma Handy, Telesur, Antigua.
The International Poetry Festival has started in the Dominican Republic. Poets from Cuba, Spain, Argentina, Colombia and Italy, among other countries, will take part in the 4-day festival. The festival will be held in various cities throughout the country, which will be hosting conferences and special activities. The Dominican public journalist and essayist Thomas Hernandez will be honored. 400,000 people filled the streets of Buenos Aires to celebrate diversity during the annual Pride Parade. At the march, a document was signed and read out aloud by participating organizations. It addressed the issue of transgender genocide, legal abortion, and safety for the LGBT community. And thousands of LGBT activists have taken to the streets of Chile's capital, Santiago, to call on the government to legalize same-sex marriage and adoption rights. Protesters urged the government of Sebastián Piñera to approve the long-delayed law. The bill was already sent to the Congress for approval by the former president, Michelle Bachelet, in 2017. Now, during Bachelet's term, the country approved civil union agreements between same-sex couples that establishes similar rights as marriage but doesn't include adoption.
We believe that it is essential that the law on homoparental adoption is approved quickly. It has been stuck in the government for a long time, and there are many children in Chile waiting to have a family to love them. And there are many people who want to love. So it is very important that it is approved quickly.
A small Mexican town has organized a pageant for the area's Muxe, or third gender residents. Some 50 Muxes competed in a pageant which was held in the town of Wikitan, a tradition that started 43 years ago. Muxes are mostly of Zapotic descent and are widely accepted in the area despite the strong presence of the Catholic Church. The blurring of genders has existed among the Mexican indigenous for centuries. And indigenous women in Bolivia have hopped on bicycles to race through the streets of El Alto. Almost 380 women bike through Bolivia's second largest city. It's also one of the world's highest cities with an altitude of over 4,000 meters. This is the 5th race of its kind, and it's open to all women over the age of 15. Time for the second break of this newscast. More news after this.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. The African Union will reform its funding and financing. State members have agreed to undertake new initiatives aimed at giving more economic independence to the regional body. They also try to boost trade in order to promote the development of the African continent. 16 staff members from the World Health Organization fighting the Ebola outbreak have been temporarily evacuated from the DRC. The evacuation came after their house was left in ruins following clashes between peacekeepers and rebels. The building was hit by a shell during an exchange of gunfire. No one was injured. The World Health Organization has currently 191 workers in Benai, an area plagued by the Ebola outbreak. Chad's government has officially declared the northern area of Mixi in Tibesi cleared of the enemy. Defense Minister Daoud Yahya has paid a visit to the army deployed in the region, where rebels have been challenging the government and violence has intensified over the last 3 months. A committee was set up last November to oppose the Chadian army. The number of casualties due to the fighting is unknown.
We have come to visit our forces in Miski, who've removed the enemy, cleared the enemy, and I call on the entire population of Miski, those belonging to the Chadian state, to the Fourth Republic, to come to the defense and security forces and leave the ground clear for those who want to create problems, and we will face them.
Pope Francis has shared lunch with around 3,000 homeless people in the Vatican to mark the Roman Catholic Church's annual World Day of the Poor. The pontiff has criticized rising wealth inequality and the poor treatment of migrants. Pope Francis previously had a mass with over 6,000 people at risk of exclusion.
Cambió la información, ellos destruyeron el chip de la cámara que ellos andan. Es ilógica la pregunta porque ustedes dicen, uno va manejando, está bien. La persona que maneja un teléfono sí va hablando.
Dozens of LGBT activists took to the streets to call on the Ukrainian government to end discrimination against transgender people. Though riot police were prepared to protect the activists, 2 women were attacked with tear gas and a Canadian journalist was assaulted as well. The government shows growing support for LGBTQ rights, but critics say homophobic behavior is still relatively common. And supporters for and against same-sex marriage have rallied in Taiwan ahead of a series of referendums to decide the future of equal marriage. Taiwan's constitutional court ruled last year that same-sex couples had the right to legally marry, but conservative groups petitioned for a referendum, and now the island must hold a series of public votes. Conservatives want a separate law for gay marriage, which many say is discriminatory.
The referendums proposed by conservative rights groups are actually kind of exclusionary. They seem to legalize gay marriage, but it's actually using laws to exclude. They use a method of letting people get married, but the marriage is still different from heterosexual marriage.
The first hospital for elephants has opened its doors in India. The facility welcomes the jumbo patients who were abused by their owners. Run by the conservation NGO Wildlife SOS, the place has a variety of high-tech equipment such as digital x-rays. After being treated, the elephants are sent to a conservation center. Hundreds of elephants in India are held in captivity to perform for tourists and at religious events. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website. We're at tellusyourenglish.net. And you can join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you for watching.